The bottle in your liquor cabinet has a history. Not the history on the label, the other history. The one that runs through speakeasies and machine guns and Meyer Lansky's dinner parties and a federal poisoning program that killed 10,000 Americans. The American liquor industry was not built despite Prohibition. It was built because of it. The brands you know, the companies that own them, the distribution networks that move them coast to coast. All of it constructed on the infrastructure of organized crime, then laundered into respectability, and placed on a shelf with a pretty label. January 16, 1920. The 18th Amendment took effect. Before Prohibition, alcohol was a fragmented local industry, small distilleries, regional breweries, neighborhood saloons. No national infrastructure, no centralized distribution. Prohibition changed that overnight. By turning alcohol into a black market commodity, the ban forced the men who wanted to sell it to solve the same problems any national distribution business must solve. Supply chains, warehousing, transportation networks, retail outlets, enforcement of territory, protection of contracts. They solved them with extraordinary efficiency and extraordinary violence. Between 1924 and 1930, Chicago became one of the largest centers for gang activity in the country. Hundreds of gangsters were killed as Al Capone's mob, the North Side Gang, and various other groups fought over money, territory, and control over bootlegging operations. Before Prohibition, there was no national liquor distribution network in America. After Prohibition, there was. The gangs built it. The federal government killed 10,000 Americans during Prohibition, deliberately. Frustrated that people continued to consume so much alcohol even after it was banned, federal officials ordered the poisoning of industrial alcohols manufactured in the United States, products regularly stolen by bootleggers and resold as drinking spirits. The new denaturing formula included methanol, kerosene, gasoline, benzene, formaldehyde, chloroform, nicotine, mercury salts. 3 ordinary drinks of the resulting product could cause blindness. By the time Prohibition ended in 1933, the federal poisoning program, by some estimates, had killed at least 10,000 Americans. In 1926, in New York City alone, 1,200 were sickened. 400 died. The following year, deaths climbed to 700. On Christmas Eve 1926, 23 people died in New York City in 2 days. New York City's chief medical examiner, Charles Norris, was explicit. The government knows it is not stopping drinking by putting poison in alcohol, yet it continues its poisoning processes heedless of the consequences. The United States government must be charged with the moral responsibility for the deaths that poisoned liquor causes. Will Rogers put it more simply. Governments used to murder by the bullet only. Now it's by the court. The program continued until repeal. No one was ever charged. If this story is hitting the way we think it is, hit the like button. It helps more people find Vault and Ruin. And this is exactly the kind of story more people need to hear. While Americans were dying from poisoned government alcohol, Samuel Bronfman was getting very rich. The Bronfman family had immigrated from Bessarabia to Canada, and by the early 1920s, had established a distillery at LaSalle in suburban Montreal. What they built was technically legal in Canada, where Prohibition had already been lifted. What they did with it was sell directly and knowingly into the American bootlegging market. Of course, we knew where it went, Bronfman would tell a later interviewer. Where it went was to organized crime. Meyer Lansky's widow recounted how Bronfman threw lavish dinner parties for her husband. Lansky was not a small figure on the margins of crime. He convinced Lucky Luciano to assassinate crime boss Giuseppe Masseria in 1931. He co-founded the National Crime Syndicate. He had a squad of professional killers. By 1970, his total holdings were estimated at $300 million. He was at Bronfman's dinner table. When Prohibition ended in 1933, Seagram's was perfectly positioned. Bronfman had stockpiled aged whiskey for years, while American distillers had nothing ready. He owned the inventory that would define the first decade of legal drinking. Seagram eventually paid a fine of $1.5 million to the U.S. government to settle delinquent excise taxes on liquor illegally exported to the U.S. during Prohibition. The government had originally asked for $60 million. They settled for 2 cents on the dollar. Louis Rosenstiel is less famous than Sam Bronfman. He should not be. Rosenstiel built Schenley Products Company into one of the largest liquor companies in North America. He obtained a medicinal alcohol license during Prohibition, allowing him to keep producing legally while building the relationships that would define the industry after repeal. New York State legislative investigations alleged that Rosenstiel was part of a consortium with underworld figures that bought liquor from Bronfman in Canada, whose other members were Meyer Lansky, Joseph Fusco, an associate of Al Capone, and Joseph Lindsay, a convicted bootlegger. Rosenstiel threw regular dinner parties honoring Lansky. His ex-wife said she had photographs. The relationship continued long after Prohibition ended. Then Rosenstiel cultivated a second set of relationships, in government. He hired J. Edgar Hoover's right-hand man, Louis Nichols, as vice president of Schenley. He donated over $1 million to the J. Edgar Hoover Foundation. He developed a close personal friendship with the FBI director himself. His protege was Roy Cohn, lawyer to Joseph McCarthy, fixer to the New York underworld. When Rosenstiel lay dying in 1976, Cohn allegedly attempted to forge his will to seize control of the Schenley fortune. The liquor empire, built on Prohibition-era mob money, connected directly to the director of the FBI and to the man who would shape American political power for the next 50 years. The distribution networks being staked out during Prohibition were not negotiated peacefully. February 14, 1929, Chicago. 4 men dressed as police officers entered a garage at 2122 North Clark Street, run by members of George Bugs Moran's gang. They lined 7 men against a wall, shot them with submachine guns. 70 bullets. All 7 dead or dying on a garage floor soaked with blood. The victims: Adam Heyer, Frank Gusenberg, Pete Gusenberg, John May, Al Weinshank, James Clark, and a civilian, Dr. Reinhard Schwimmer. Nobody was ever convicted. Al Capone was in Florida. The St. Valentine's Day massacre was not exceptional. It was representative. During the beer wars, hundreds of gangsters were killed across Chicago as various factions fought over routes and retail and the right to supply a city whose government Capone had already purchased. Every major American city had its version. The distribution network was being drawn in bodies. December 5, 1933. The 21st Amendment repealed Prohibition. The men who had built the illegal infrastructure stepped smoothly into the legal one. Seagram, Hiram Walker, Schenley, National Distillers. The Big Four, all 4 of them having profited from the Prohibition era through bootlegging supply, medicinal licenses, or stockpiled inventory, now dominated the legal American spirits market. The advantage was simple and total. Aged whiskey takes years to produce. The men who had kept producing through the dry years owned the only aged product available at repeal. Jim Beam got his family distillery running in 100 days, but needed years before the whiskey was drinkable. Bronfman's shelves were full. The criminal distribution networks needed no reconstruction either. The routes that had moved bootleg liquor past federal agents now moved legal product with equal efficiency. The men who had ordered the violence moved into boardrooms. The men who had done the violence moved into the new criminal enterprises that Prohibition's profits had financed. The infrastructure of organized crime became the infrastructure of American industry. Quietly, completely, without a single trial. The Big Four did not remain independent. Hiram Walker is now part of Pernod Ricard. Schenley passed to Guinness. National Distillers folded into Jim Beam, which merged with Suntory. Seagram collapsed in 2000 after Edgar Bronfman Jr. spent the family fortune on a failed entertainment empire. Its brands were divided among the global spirits conglomerates. Chivas Regal to Pernod Ricard, Captain Morgan to Diageo, Crown Royal to Diageo. Sam Bronfman's empire, built by selling whiskey to Meyer Lansky's bootleggers, settled with the American government for 2 cents on the dollar. Its brands now sold by British and French and Japanese corporations in every supermarket and liquor store in the world. The laundering took 70 years. It is now total. Not one label mentions any of it. The American government banned alcohol in 1920, then poisoned the supply, killing at least 10,000 of its own citizens while knowing the poison was not stopping the drinking. Then watched as the gangs built a national distribution network in blood and bodies across every major American city. Then repealed the ban in 1933, and watched the men who had financed the violence step into the legal industry the violence had shaped. The Seagrams in your liquor cabinet was built by a man who admitted he knew exactly where his whiskey was going. The Scotch brands that followed were purchased with money made in the same trade. The distribution networks that move spirits across America today are the direct descendants of the routes that moved bootleg liquor past federal agents 100 years ago. The bottle has a history. It is just not the history on the label. The vault gets richer. And somewhere, always somewhere, something else is burning. Subscribe to Vault and Ruin. We go where the money went.